Hey guys, Zach here with the Kennedy Report. It's February 19th, 2020, and this is going to be the middle of the day video for you. We're going to have another one come out in roughly 6 hours. So let's go ahead and get into it. What we're going to be covering today in this video is going to be the global supply chain that is at risk right now, the economy, as well as some new documents that have come out of China from the Chinese Disease Control Center. Obviously, we don't trust half the information that's coming out in these papers, but we still want to go over them because there's some truth always hidden in it. As well as we're going to talk about how Xi Jinping single-handedly has possibly cured all of INCOV cases. We're going to go over quite a few things here in this video. I don't know how long it's going to be, but we're going to go ahead and get straight into it. So we're currently sitting at 74,000 cases, 188. Deaths are above 2006 now. So once again, just to reiterate, we have passed SARS numbers drastically. So anyone comparing this to the SARS epidemic of 2003, which was taken far more serious, you need to correct them. Let them know. This is significantly worse. We're at about 15,000 recovered at this time. Again, not a lot of difference since our video around 1 o'clock last night. As you can see, this curve is still pretty drastic. We're going to go ahead and Singapore had some more cases confirmed. Japan as well. Hong Kong sitting about the same. That spike we saw... The United States went back down, apparently. I can't keep up with this. It looks like they removed the Nebraska cases last night. So last night we were sitting at 29 confirmed U.S. cases, and I don't know why they removed those numbers, because those were people that did come in from China on those evacuation flights. We have not seen any activity in Mexico, as well as South America and South Africa still. Things are still relatively calm. Egypt is one I've been keeping an eye on because while it's still an emerging country, technically, they have a decent healthcare system. We haven't seen anything pop up over there. So we're pretty much done with our map here. As always, tradition, we check in here. Hubei province, mainland China. 61,000 confirmed cases, 10,000 recovered nearly, and 2,000 deaths. I still expect this to be the leading indicator of what's going on in the rest of China. Now, we're going to go ahead and skip straight over to what I was going to say for the end. But we're going to come over here. Where is it at? I forgot. It's in our images. So, back on February 3rd, Xi Jinping, the supreme leader of China, hosted a committee in which they talked. That's basically when the entire Communist Party gets together and discuss their plans, they make their votes, whatever they want to do. So back on February 3rd, we'll start at January 20th. We had 21 reported cases or confirmed cases. And as you can see, as the days go through, up till February 3rd, we saw increased numbers of reported cases, and it was growing, and we could tell. But somehow, by some magical means, Xi Jinping, after giving the Communist Party his speech and they all voted on something, they magically somehow completely reversed the way in which this virus was spreading and infecting people, and confirmed cases outside of Hubei was being reported. So again, look at that decline. Absolutely magical. We need to get him in our country so we can just take some of that magic that he's somehow producing and apply it to things like cancer, AIDS, and all the other horrible diseases. Absolutely amazing. So this is only reported cases outside of Hubei. I think, okay, let's be serious now. The fact that cases outside of Hubei were being reported and they are increasing daily, and that only after the Communist Party had its standing meeting did the cases suddenly decline. I don't think this has anything to do with, government control measures going into effect, because we still see many videos and photos coming out of these other regions that show otherwise. Almost virtually in all these other provinces and cities, the cases just stopped. They slowed down drastically. The focus has only been on Hubei. Look at that. 61,000 cases out of the 74,000 in mainland China come from the epicenter. So I'll let you use your brain on that one and come to your own conclusions. Obviously, I'm not buying it. Let's go ahead and move over to the next bit of information we see. Here is a document from 2015 December. One of the people who authored this medical report worked at the Wuhan Institute for Disease, aka that like laboratory that was in the center of the outbreak that many people questioned that maybe they had a leak with bats. Basically, this paper goes into SARS-like clusters of circulating bat coronavirus pose threat for human emergence. This is in 2015. One of the main people in here was working at the Chinese lab that I keep trying to make a link to. Now, basically what this paper goes into, it talks about how there are several coronaviruses that pose a threat to humans circulating in Chinese bat populations. They also talk about how it was causing severe acute respiratory syndrome, what the coronavirus does. It goes into lab tests on rats, etc., and, the effects on human cells. So I will post a link to this for you to read because this is just too much information to read out loud for you. But basically, this is information that back in 2015 would have, it's interesting that we see this, okay? And we know because this guy is an author in this paper, they were testing this kind of thing in those laboratories. Definitely worth a read. Highly recommend it. It's got a ton of good information. Now, the main bulk of, well, not the main bulk, supply chain will be it. The next thing I want to talk about is China's CDC weekly report. Now, I want to highlight a few things. We're going to go ahead and scroll in here. They have Hubei province with 33,000 confirmed cases, 979 deaths. Now, this is coming from the Chinese government itself. It's a good little breakdown of medical information. We're going to go over it real quick. Now, obviously, this wasn't up to date. This was like through a certain period of time. I don't have it off the... Let's see. It's right here. January 31st through February 11th. So... here's our age bracket. Sorry, I forget my hand does not show up magically on the screen where I'm pointing. So we're going to use my mouse. Our ages 0 to 9, we had 416 confirmed cases. You notice how they conveniently left this one blank here? We have deaths, case fatality rate, observed time, and the mortality per 10 PD. Now, I want to go ahead and say something now, and I can't show you the video, obviously, on YouTube and or Facebook. We know that children through those ages 0 through 9 are dying, and quite a few of them are. And that's because there are videos coming from the nurses themselves in China, as well as from hospital security footage being leaked out of 4 to 5 dead children, ages 0 to 9, based on their size, being stuffed into body bags. And it's not just one video, it's several. And we're actually seeing entire other videos from within Hubei specifically that show entire families deceased in their apartment. Very graphic and disturbing things. So right off the bat, it's just not true. It can't be true. The age bracket 10 to 9, again, 549 confirmed cases, 1 death. Case fatality rate 0.2%. I don't believe it because the video evidence does not match up to what the Chinese Disease Center is saying clearly. Now, this was from January 31st to the February, whatever. Doesn't matter. The video evidence from that time also is not corresponding correctly. We know they're lying. I say it every video, and I'm going to keep saying it. We cannot rely on the Chinese government's information. These give us a peek into what they're letting out. I mean, some of it is truth. That's what the Chinese government does. They muddy the water. They release some true information. They do these localized tests. We know for a fact that these numbers aren't correct. So I see a lot of people basing, important information off of this. What we can glean, though, is that... what they are saying, what they are pointing towards, sorry, let me get my mind back on track here, is that people who are older far more significantly impacted by this, death rate-wise. So, of course, we know the younger age thing is being hidden. I know it's a hot button subject. They don't want to release the deaths of children. But the video evidence alone would indicate that they're lying here, so we don't really know the truth on that one. Our fatality rate for people of the ages 20 through 29 is only at 7 out of 3,609. That's a 1.8% chance of death. Now, 50% of those people who were in the ICU died. That is what this report admits to, so not good. Let's see here. 30 to 39, 7,600 confirmed cases. Oh wait, sorry, did I read that incorrectly? I did, I apologize. 0.7% chance of death with the 20 to 29. Ages 30 through 39, we've had 7,600 confirmed cases with 18 deaths. That's the 1.8%. Now, this is when the numbers obviously start to escalate, but again, we don't... These numbers are more. They have to be. There have to be more. Maybe these are specific from certain hospitals. I don't know. I just can't picture one hospital dealing with 10,000 people. The age bracket 40 through 49, they had 8,571 cases, representing almost 20% of the total cases, with 38 deaths, with a 3.7% chance of fatality. Additionally, as we go through this, 50 through 59, we had, we'll just go ahead and say, people ages 50 through 80 saw nearly 30% fatality rate for the disease itself, as well as being the biggest group affected by this. Additionally, we saw that men had nearly double the death rate of women. We had 658 men who passed away and 370 women, yet the case numbers confirmed for both men and women are nearly the same at 21,000 roughly, 21 to 22,000. So this report gives us some great information to glean from it, even though we know a lot of the information is not true in a way. What they do tell us is telling a story. It also goes into the occupation that was greatly affected. Retirees, 46% of the deaths reported in this report, and then 37% also were other-none, so we just don't know what that category is. Service industry and farm and labor, they were not as affected. I mean, we're talking service industries, 2%. The farmers and laborers, only 13.6%. Is this accurate? Again, I can't tell you. It is coming from the Chinese government, so grain of salt. These numbers are probably significantly worse. We had Hubei with 33,000 cases at this time, 979 deaths. So Hubei at that time represented 95% of the total deaths reported. And again, Hubei is the leading place where this epidemic took place. It seems to be the one area the Chinese government isn't hiding information on. We go back to that image I showed you when General Xi Jinping, president of China, had his standing meeting and magically turned the numbers around instantly. Wuhan-related exposures, we're not going to go into this. We got people missing. So, okay, Comirnaty, I'm not going to even say it. People with pre-existing conditions, such as myself, we had hypertension, so high blood pressure. They saw a fatality rate of 39%. People with diabetes, 20%. Cardiovascular disease, this is where it's hitting hard, and evidence is growing that the second time you get the disease is pretty fatal. Cardiovascular disease, 22.7% of the people died had it. Chronic respiratory disease, 7.9%. But the ones who are... Okay, so cancer, only 1.5% of the people who... I mean, granted, most of the population isn't going to have cancer. But a good chunk of it is missing. They don't even have the information on it. So the diabetes one is concerning. I mean, 19.7% of the casualties with people with diabetes. So they had 1,102 cases of diabetes, with 80 of those people dying. Hypertension, 2,683, with 161 of them dying, so 39.7%. I just don't feel like that even mathematically calculates out. Maybe I'm just not awake enough. Anyway, absolutely terrifying information. Here's another one. Period of date of onset. See if we can glean any information from this. Not really. Case fatality rate. I will post this exact file in, or the link to it in the YouTube description, so you guys can read it yourself as well. They admit in this report that the infection rapidly spread through China very quickly. 627 counties reported cases basically in that short period of time. This isn't even the full thing. The other thing I'd like to point out too is in the report they say the disease started popping up around January 11th. We know that's not true because the doctor who passed away was reporting this back in early December. So again, they give us a little bit of information, but they don't give us it all. So it's no wonder why the American government had no idea how to respond to this thing correctly. It's no wonder that any of the other countries could take decisive action because the Chinese government is hiding so much. They let little things out like this. We're getting the same information that our government's getting, and that's terrifying. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and roll over into a new subject, one that has me most concerned because people are not really talking about it at this point, and that's going to be the global supply chain. As many people know, the global supply chain is mostly based in China, and that's because for many years now, these first world countries such as the United States, Europe, and all that, they have gone from industrial to consumer-based while slowly outsourcing everything to China, and there's a byproduct of that, right? So in an effort to make things cheaper continuously, which is, again, it's capitalism 101. I have no problem with capitalism. It's the only method in which it's lifted more people out of poverty than anything else. That's another subject for another video. But if you have a factory in China that makes, say specifically, frames, right? It's beneficial to not have to ship those frames across the ocean. I'm sorry about my phone going off. Let me mute that for a second. These guys just nonstop talking. There we go. It's beneficial for them to just have the factory that adds, say, the fabric to that right next door. Same thing with microchips, right? The phone factories like iPhone are in there. They have all these little factories that create all the individual parts and ship it to the main factory that puts it all together. China is full of these things, and our country does not have many of them. By our country, I'm referring to the United States. Most things are actually made in China, and we all know that. It's a joke, made in China. Everything is made in China, right? So what a lot of people don't know is that 90% of our common drugs are made in China, and right now with the quarantine in effect, with everything going on, nothing is being made. There was a few factories that did open, but then they'd had cases break out, and then all those people were quarantined. It's not looking good. Again, I'll post these in the YouTube description so you can read on. This is a paperback from, I want to say 2015. Again, 3-4 years ago. Things that are made in China: electrical equipment, farming machines, new materials, plastics, things like that. Energy saving, new energy vehicles, basically medicine, ocean equipment, aerospace equipment. Everything is made in China because that is the manufacturing hub of the world. It is far cheaper to put the labor over there. Raw materials come from China. You don't want to ship that overseas, right? It's more expensive. They save more money building it in China and gathering the materials in China. So what we have not been preparing for is the fact that the global supply chain every year goes through this thing around Chinese Lunar New Year where the factory's production just spikes up right before Chinese Lunar New Year because people don't go to work for 2 to 4 weeks. And when they, return back to work, that extra supply, that extra demand that they had put in is usually depleted, and they immediately pick back up, and production resumes. You don't notice it. There's a very small, maybe little period of time in which there's a delay and stuff, but for the most part, it's seamless. And one of the things that's going on right now is Chinese Lunar New Year has ended and factory workers have not returned. We talked about this a little bit in the video last night. There are people talking about their personal experiences on Twitter and other social media saying that, supplies aren't going to be coming in until July. And that's the numbers that are being reported now. So we're talking about a global supply halt. People have not returned to work in China, and this is a multifaceted thing. We're talking about miners who go out and get the ore, loggers. There's so many resources that have to be refined, turned into a raw product or a processed product, and then manufactured into goods. All these things we heavily rely on the Chinese to do because it's been cheaper and it's helped build the Chinese economy, and they've made it so that the companies were incentivized to go there. Everything is made in China. We're so dependent on them. Hyundai in South Korea has stopped production of vehicles because of supply problems. iPhone announced they are going to have a huge problem because none of their factories are running and none of the sub-factories that supply components for their phones are running. It has not hit our economy yet, but it will. It will hit our economy, and it's going to be interesting to see what happens. Again, we talked about this in the last video that I posted last night, but we're going to reiterate here. When you have a point at which the virus no longer poses a bigger threat than a crashing economy. You have an economy completely halting and crashing, and you have the virus, and the potential threat that it poses. Infections, hospital. There is a point in which that, whatever you want to call it, level will shift, and the threat of a crashing economy is far worse than, say, your population getting a virus burned through it. And I can understand why, honestly, it is true. Anarchy and economy crashing are terrible. Those will spread famine and disease just as quickly as this nCoV. And, while the fatality rate may look like it's 2.3% now, when the hospital beds are maxed out and no one can get the critical care they need, which we see with 20%, the fatality rate could spike as high as 36%. Yeah, no, it's not a good situation. And the markets right now seem to be strong. We have the Chinese government injecting money. We have this great economy under the Trump administration. Everything is booming. But keep in mind, Lunar New Year is over. Majority of workers have not returned yet to the factories. That supply is gone. We are going to feel a huge slag. I don't know how it's going to affect the U.S. economy because, as I always say, I'm not a virologist and I'm not an economist. What I am is a person that reads information and redistributes to you, and I read this information and I see potential problems coming down the road. Excuse me. Additionally, I see the problem with the medications, right? A vast majority of our medical equipment is manufactured in China. 90% of our generic medication is made in China. Even more so, non-generic medications, these main brands, right? The raw materials to make the medicine is made in China and gathered in China and shipped over to the US and Europe in these fancy laboratories to make controlled medicine. This is a problem that we've been talking about for years. Penicillin, all these things. We heavily rely on China for everything. China is a hotspot for problems, okay? Not only is it a communist country with crazy dictatorial, leadership and all these other problems, but, it has these virus outbreaks, SARS, nCoV, swine flu. I mean, we have completely allowed ourselves to rely on a foreign power for most of the things we need. I would say 90% of the things in my room right now, okay, made in China. Any of these things go out. My electronics, I'm shit out of luck, okay? So, and it's no different for you. Go around your house and look, okay? You go check your medicine cabinet. Majority of those medicines have been made in China, and if they're the main non-generic brands, the components used to make them were made in China. So that's a real huge threat, and the economy is going to feel a ding in this. And why I'm so concerned about this is, again, we had a Twitter example that Peak Prosperity pointed out was, you have a guy in the furniture industry. We're not going to name the business, obviously, but they were told that they're not going to get new supply until July, possibly even longer, depending on how long this thing goes on, quarantine. And a company isn't going to keep around hundreds of thousands of employees across this nation when they're not getting inventory in to sell to pay those employees. They're going to lay them off, and they might close their doors for good. There is no end to companies that are going to suffer if the supply chain is not restored shortly. There's all kinds of problems that come in with the supply chain being restored, but it's going to come to a point where those things have to be weighed against each other. Yeah, there's that. We're also going to take a peek at our Twitter intel sources that I will openly share with you guys because they're good sources. Of course, I'm going to keep a few still hush-hush because there's just too much shit on there I don't want people to see that is graphic. You're more than welcome to message me directly on Facebook or YouTube for that. While we're on that note, please subscribe if you enjoy this content, and please discuss this in the comment section. I'd love to hear about what you're doing to prepare for the potential outbreak in the United States or your prospective country. Additionally, just us discussing this is critical to this problem being answered and to getting that knowledge out there, because there's so many people that still have no idea what's going on, and it's up to us to spread the news, to give out this information, because some people who should be doing it aren't. They're lacking. On Facebook, I'm going to put a link to our Facebook page. We post way more content on Facebook than we do on YouTube because there's just so many things that I can't throw in these videos. I don't edit these videos. I film them live from the moment they start to the moment they end. I give you this information raw. I don't click and pick things and choose the perfect clips. If you see me hiccup or burp, you're going to get it. On Facebook, we have little clips, little translated photos that come straight out of China. If you can go over to the Facebook page, give it a like, and follow us on there as well, that is super beneficial. We have seen extraordinarily great growth in this last week. And again, I always say I don't care about the numbers, but the more people we reach, the better, and I'm seeing the positive side to the community I've been building here. I got same people looking forward to information every week, and it makes it feel like I'm actually doing something to help people. But some raw numbers, we saw 999% growth on YouTube in views, likes, and time watched. Facebook, same thing, exponential growth as well. I don't think it was as high, but doing wonderful, and I really appreciate your guys' support. We got to do what we can. I highly recommend people make their own content on the subject as well, because we're all being silenced. Okay, so now that I got that out, let's go ahead and go over to some videos coming out of the area. As you can see, this is very common in China. We have these markets, they're like malls, but they're massive, and normally they're packed where there's just so many people that you can't even breathe. But as you can see here, just absolutely empty right now. You have people fighting over supplies. Over in Hong Kong, they've started an investigation into toilet paper theft because toilet paper is just completely disappearing in Hong Kong. It's gold. It's worth a lot of money, and the government's, trying to take action to stem the panic. We have a guy getting absolute shit beat out of him because he's not wearing a mask in public. Look at him. You got 30 cops, half of them who don't even have their mask on, or it's pulled down. This is what it's like living in an authoritative state, okay? Weaponized police and security, hunting down citizens, and granted, it is for his own safety. He should be wearing a mask, right? We don't know the full situation with it. Look at the pure force they're using on him. And this is one of the more tame videos. They are going around and they are like death squads looking for people, and they take them into custody. Then they throw them in quarantine because they weren't wearing a mask, and they may have been perfectly healthy, but when they get thrown into these quarantine centers, they're going to get sick. So, and I tell you that, look, they got one of those poles like used for dogs. We're seeing these all over China being used to detain people. They get the cord around their neck, lock them in, hold them down to the ground. His crime? Not wearing a mask. ridiculous. Another one. She's wearing a mask. What's going on with her? What did she do wrong? Probably suspected of being from Wuhan. Or the cops just want to grope this poor girl. They're fucking disgusting. They're animals, okay? I don't care what anyone says. I will never allow a day to come in which our country allows this kind of shit to occur. I won't stand for it, and neither should anyone else in the free world. So, here's one that kind of concerning. So, what used to cost this lady in this video she's talking about, what used to cost her a couple of yuan, Chinese currency, now cost her 50. And she said at the rate at which it's increasing, you know, it's soon going to be a couple hundred. Now, granted, that's not a lot of money in America. So right now she said that she paid roughly $7.94 for everything you see in this photo. You got a cabbage, okay? Cabbage in the United States is like $2. 3 potatoes, maybe 60 cents. 2 tomatoes, daikon radish, and I'll be honest with you, I don't know what the one on the bottom is. So if you know what that is, let me know. But nearly 51, and if you go and look at the average salary for what some of these people make in rural parts of China, that's 2-3 weeks salary. It's really sad. I did not go too much further down in this video, or in this particular intel feed, so we just need to be careful. Look at this, just tons of police going around, detaining people, throwing them in, you know, the camps. Perfect example. I think we showed this one, a similar video a few nights back. Look, they're going through the town. If you have your lights on, you need to turn them off because you can't attract people. They are shutting it down. These are absolutely draconian measures that the Chinese government's putting in, but it's absolutely necessary in order to stop the flow of infection. They are taking this far more serious than we are, and I think that is concerning in and of itself. This is like a compilation video of everything that's going on with the, you know, the police going around. This is why I call them like death squads, quote unquote. Look, they got shovels. They got their little pinning down rods that we were just showing in that other video. They just go around and look for people. So, that's what's going on. What's going on in this video, to be honest. That was the other thing we wanted to talk about as well. I mean, look at the measures at which they're doing at grocery stores to keep themselves protected. They always have the most interesting music associated with their videos. The head doctor of a Hubei hospital, not the head doctor, I'm sorry, the director, the person that leads everything in the hospital died also. That guy got the best care possible. He was probably literally like getting the best care you could get. He was the director of the hospital. He had endless resources that these staff would have spent on him. Keep in mind, this is a communist country, and people in power are greatly more benefited than the people at the bottom, despite what communism and socialism preaches. So, he passed away, and that should go to show you. And as hospitals become more overwhelmed and resources thin, it's only going to get worse. Last thing I want to cover real quick is the numbers being reported outside of Hubei province have virtually stopped increasing. They do little teeny increases. And like we compared it with the one photo. Nope, not that one. Must have closed it out after Xi Jinping's meeting. These are the rural parts of China. They don't have access to like first-tier hospitals and medical staff and equipment. How many people are dying in these rural areas where they do not have access? Again, they are dirt poor. China has been working very hard to decrease the poverty rate in China, and they always have that quote where, you know, oh, China has lifted 1 million people out of poverty, or I think it's a crazy number, but the fact of the matter is they just lowered the amount of money that determines if you're in the poverty line to reach that number. Many parts of China are still very rural. They do not have tier 1 medical systems. They don't even have tier 2 or tier 3. They're using traditional Chinese medicine. We look at I can't remember the YouTuber's name right now, but he lived in China for 15 years. He trained medical doctors how to speak English and other things. And he even said majority of these clinics and hospitals outside of the main cities, they don't even have antibacterial soap. They don't even have medications to treat things. It's very grim. Like, they might have a cabinet with like 2 shelves with like 3 pills in it. That is the grim reality of China. And that is all I have for you right now. I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, please like, subscribe, comment. I'd love to get some discussions going with some people to talk about this. As well, if you're into the subject and you have information and you want to share it, we're going to be having some podcasts, group chats on this session, as well as other issues. Friendly reminder, this is not only a coronavirus channel. I'm going to be talking about other things, of course, but right now this is my main focus. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Take care. And I'll see you later tonight in my next video.